Your child seems fine. They eat dinner, they do their homework, they say good when you ask how school was. And you believe them. Because why wouldn't you? They're not crying, they're not acting out, there's no scene, no meltdown, no obvious sign that anything is wrong. But here's what the research on childhood anxiety consistently shows. The children who are the hardest to help aren't the ones who are visibly falling apart. They're the ones you'd never suspect. Because at some point, quietly, without anyone noticing, they learned that showing their anxiety was more painful than carrying it alone. And this video is about exactly how that happens. Not because parents do something cruel, not because children are broken, but because of a very specific pattern. A back and forth between a child and the people they love most that teaches anxious kids, step by step, that hiding is safer than being honest. If your child has ever seemed fine when something felt off to you, stay with this. Before we talk about how kids learn to hide anxiety, we need to understand what that hiding actually looks like. Because it almost never looks like hiding. It looks like a child who's easy to manage. It looks like a kid who doesn't complain much, who adjusts quickly, who seems mature for their age. It looks like the child teachers describe as so calm and never a problem. It looks like a teenager who says, "I'm fine, I don't need help," and actually seems to mean it. It looks like competence. And that's exactly why it's so hard to see. Dr. Tamar Chansky, a psychologist who has spent decades working with anxious children, describes this as the anxiety mask. The face a child puts on when they've learned that their real emotional state isn't welcome in their environment. And here's what's important. The environment doesn't have to be cruel or cold for that lesson to land. It can happen in loving homes. In homes with present, engaged, well-meaning parents. It happens because of something much more subtle. A series of small moments that, when they stack up, teach a child one very simple thing. When I show you I'm scared, things get worse, not better. So they stop showing. It starts early. And it usually starts with something ordinary. A child is anxious about something small. A new classroom, a birthday party, a swimming lesson. The anxiety is real to them. Their heart is beating faster. Their stomach feels wrong. They want to go home. And they show it. Because they're little, and that's what little kids do. They cry, or they cling, or they say, "I don't want to go." Now, what happens next is everything. In many cases, the parent responds in one of a few ways that all feel like love, but, to the child's nervous system, register as something else. Response 1. The fix. The parent immediately tries to solve the problem. "It's going to be fine. You're going to have so much fun. Look, there's a slide." Fast, reassuring, optimistic. The anxiety is treated like a problem to be closed, not a feeling to be witnessed. The child gets the message. My fear is an inconvenience. The correct response to it is to stop having it. Response 2. The mirror. The parent, who has their own anxiety, absorbs the child's distress and amplifies it. Their voice tightens. They look worried. They ask too many follow-up questions. "Are you sure you're okay? Do you feel sick? Should we go?" The child gets a different message, but one that leads to the same place. My anxiety is contagious. When I feel it, I hurt the people I love. Response 3. The push-through. "You're fine. There's nothing to be scared of. Go in." Said with love. Said with the genuine belief that exposure builds confidence. And sometimes it does. But said before the child feels heard, it teaches something else. My fear is not real. Feeling it means I'm weak. None of these parents are bad parents. Every single one of these responses comes from love. But here's what the child is doing in each scenario. They are a tiny scientist running an experiment. What happens when I show fear? And the data they're collecting, again and again, across hundreds of small moments, is telling them. Showing fear makes things harder. The fix doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like dismissal. The mirror doesn't feel like empathy. It feels like panic. The push-through doesn't feel like encouragement. It feels like shame. So the child does what every intelligent organism does when a strategy isn't working. They change the strategy. They learn to mask. This is the part that most parents find hardest to hear. The hiding isn't defiance. It isn't manipulation. It isn't a sign that your child doesn't trust you. It's adaptation. And by the time most parents notice it, their child has been practicing it for years. Here's how the skill develops. Around age 6 to 8, children begin to understand that emotions have social consequences. They watch how the adults around them respond to different emotional displays. Which ones get warmth, which ones get irritation, which ones make the room feel uncomfortable. Anxious children, who tend to be highly observant and deeply sensitive to interpersonal signals, are especially good at reading this. They start to curate what they share. They learn that "I had a great day" is faster and easier than the truth. They learn that stomach aches get more sympathy than vague dread. They learn that talking about physical symptoms, headaches, tiredness, feeling sick, is more acceptable than saying, "I'm scared and I don't know why." And so they translate. Dr. Wendy Silverman, a leading researcher in childhood anxiety at Yale, has documented how anxious children develop what she calls emotional camouflage, the ability to present a socially acceptable emotional front while the internal experience is entirely different. By early adolescence, many anxious children are essentially running two simultaneous emotional streams: the one they show, the one they live. And the tragedy is that the better they get at it, the more isolated they become. Because the mask works. Parents stop probing, teachers stop worrying, friends don't notice. Everyone relaxes, and the child gets the signal that the mask is correct. When I hide it, the world runs more smoothly. Therefore, keep hiding. Here's what makes this so hard. Anxious kids who've learned to hide aren't obvious. But they're not completely invisible either. The signals are just not the ones we're trained to look for. They're the child who gets sick a lot, but only before certain events. Stomach aches on Sunday evenings, headaches on mornings with tests. Parents take them to the doctor. Everything comes back normal. What's happening is physiological anxiety with nowhere to go. The body is expressing what the mind has learned to suppress. They're the child who's a perfectionist. They redo their homework 3 times, panic about minor mistakes, cry over a 94. Everyone says, "Oh, they're just driven." What's actually happening is anxiety channeled into control, the one place it feels safe to feel it. They're the child who's so mature. They listen, they don't complain, they help younger kids. They seem old for their age. What's actually happening is that they're exhausted from performing stability and have learned that their own needs aren't worth the airspace. They're the teenager who goes quiet. Not moody quiet, just less there. Less eye contact at dinner, more time alone. Parents think it's normal adolescence. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a child who has been holding their internal world alone for so long they've forgotten how to let anyone in. They're the child who asks, "Are you okay?" before they tell you anything. Every time. They check your emotional temperature before they risk showing you theirs. That's not politeness. That's risk management. They've learnt to assess whether the environment is safe before they reveal themselves. If you recognized your child in any of that, take a breath. This is not about what you did wrong. It's about what can still change. Researchers who study anxious children and their families have found something consistently hopeful. The mask comes off when the experiment gets different results. When a child shows a sliver of their real emotional state and something new happens, When the fear is met with curiosity instead of urgency, with presence instead of solutions, the nervous system updates its data, showing it didn't make things worse. Let me try again. Here's what that looks like in practice. The first shift is slowing your own reaction down. Anxious children are exquisitely tuned to parent anxiety. When they see you tighten, rush to reassure, or look worried, they interpret it as confirmation that there's something to hide. The opposite, a genuinely calm, unhurried presence, sends a different message. Your fear landed somewhere safe. This doesn't mean pretending nothing is wrong. It means not treating their emotion as an emergency to be resolved. The second shift is replacing questions with observations. Are you okay? Is a closed question that invites, fine. You seemed a little quiet at dinner. Is an observation that opens a door without demanding they walk through it immediately. Anxious kids who've learned to mask often need a longer runway to decide whether it's safe to be honest. The third shift is tolerating the silence after you open the door. Most parents ask, get the, I'm fine, and close the loop. What changes things is staying in the room. Not pushing, not asking again, just being physically present and unhurried. The child often talks 15 minutes later, when they've decided the door is still open. And the most important shift of all, letting them see you get it wrong. Children learn that emotional honesty is safe when they watch the adults they love practice it imperfectly. A parent who says, I felt really overwhelmed today and I didn't handle it well, is teaching something no amount of reassurance can. Feelings are survivable, and having them doesn't make you a burden. The mask doesn't fall off all at once. It comes off slowly, in moments, in small decisions to trust. But it does come off, when the experiment keeps returning a new result. The children who learn to hide their anxiety aren't hiding because they don't love their parents. They're hiding because they love them too much to be a problem. That's not a character flaw. That's a child trying, in the only way they know, to protect the relationship that matters most to them. And the fact that you're here, watching this, asking this question, paying this kind of attention, is already the beginning of a different experiment. One where the result might be different. If this landed somewhere, share it with a parent who might need it. It's the kind of thing people don't talk about in the school parking lot, but think about at midnight. And subscribe if you want to keep going deeper into the psychology of what's really happening inside your kids. Because next week, we're covering something that surprises almost every parent who hears it. See you then.